Founded in Bend, Oregon in 2019, Respect Outside provides sexual harassment prevention trainings to businesses in the outdoor industry, including manufacturers, retailers, outfitters, nonprofits, government agencies, camps, and universities. I'm excited to have the founders, Gina McClard and Jim Miller, on the show today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Well, Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, good to have you guys on. I love doing these multiple person ones. I don't do them that often, so it's always interesting, creates a little challenges sometimes, but it's always fun. I'm glad you guys made the time to do this so quickly. Man, we put this together in a couple days? It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It was a conversation that we had at Outdoor Retailer that kind of led to this.
Yeah. And Gina, when did you get notified this morning?
That's right. Yeah, but it's okay. I'm a quick learner, so.
Cool. Have either of you been on a podcast before?
We did an event with Outdoor Retailer magazine that was a web-based presentation and followed by an hour of questions and answers. And that was a really great format for us because folks have a lot of questions around the topics that we work with organizations on. And so that kind of like ability to have kind of like feedback was an awesome format for us.
I'll bet.
But this is the first true podcast we've done.
Oh, cool. Have you been on any radio shows or anything? Any other media type? TV?
I have, yes. I've done a lot of media with radio and TV, but back in the day before there were podcasts. And
oh, right. Yeah.
I love the new format.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I'm digging it too. Yeah. So I always like to get started with finding out how everybody was introduced to the outdoor. Gina, you want to tell us how you were introduced to the outdoors?
Sure. So my family was not outdoorsy at all, but my dad was a pilot for Delta Airlines. So we traveled a lot and would go on the occasional ski trip, but mostly my exposure and love for the outdoors came from just growing up in rural Georgia, gardening and fishing a little bit and rafting the Chattahoochee, which is not at all whitewater rafting. It's very chill, sit in a tube and go slowly. Sometimes you have to kick. But, I took a class in high school on camping, and I had these wonderful women that took us up into the North Georgia mountains, and I learned to leave no trace and make a fire and to read a topo map. And all of that led me to just life experiences in the outdoor, backcountry camping, and allowed me to feel safe and confident in places where I eventually went, like Antarctica and Africa. So it was from a high school class.
Wow, that's amazing. And what'd you do in Antarctica?
I was a general field assistant down at McMurdo Station on the Rice Island ice shelf
in
1990. So I was there for about 10 months and I wintered over in 1990. So I've done pretty much the opposite of most people who go down to McMurdo Station or other U.S. scientific bases down in Antarctica. They come for the summer and they leave. It's a 3-month stint. I've always chosen things the hard way. And so I arrived at the close of season and wintered over and then left after the fall, so to speak, down there.
Wow, I can't imagine. I went down on
intense.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was down there on a trip with Sobek. We traced the Shackleton thing, and it was a fabulous trip. It's amazing down there. It's just fantastic.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Pretty cool. And Jim, how about you? How did you get introduced to the outdoors? You're more of an outdoorsy guy from the get-go, sounds like.
Yeah, my family was really instrumental, right? So at least my dad, right, loved to camp and fish and really drug my mom along on that. But I have 3 siblings, and we did a lot of like RV trips, right? So pile the family and all the kids and the dog in the RV and head down the coast of California, or sometimes we went north into Canada, but a lot of family-related stuff. We lived in the Bay Area, so I grew up surfing and skating, and that was really high school for me. And that moving water experience of surfing really led into whitewater rafting, and that's what I did in the summers during college.
Mm-hmm.
That just extended right into post-college, following the winter into ski towns throughout the West.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that at the show. That wasn't my introduction to the outdoors, but I was a guide in the summers through college. And man, those are the best years of my life. I had so much fun and made a bunch of money, a bunch of great friends. It was awesome.
I worked for a company called Whitewater Voyages in California, and we were running all over the state of California and up into Oregon. So really a great opportunity to see a lot of different rivers and experience a lot of different places. And that organization had a lot of women in it as well, right? So the work that we're doing now, where we hear a lot of stories about women having to make a move into like outfitted businesses, my perspective is very different because with Whitewater Voyages, we had so many women who were running really difficult whitewater were classified guides. And that was kind of what I thought of as normal. But then as I started to travel around most of the Western United States, discovered that that's not indeed how most women are, the level that they're guiding at and the opportunities that they're provided.
Yeah. California has some pretty technical rivers. We don't get the big water that they get in like the Grand Canyon and stuff, but there's a lot of technical rivers in the West that challenge you in different ways. So it's super fun. I had a blast. Yeah. And Gina, you have a lot of experience helping people with challenging environments or challenging life situations. How'd you get on that path?
Well, I've always been an activist. I've always been a champion for the underdog. I guess it would start in college. I became an environmental activist, and it's what drove me to law school. I wanted to be an environmental lawyer. And I got to law school, and it coincided with the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings, which were broadcast all over the school on television, right?
Right.
And watching Anita Hill testify, I kind of was, for the first time in my life, put a name to a lot of the unwelcome behaviors that I had experienced in my life at that point, particularly down on the ice, right? So the ratio of men to women in Antarctica is 10-1, and it's a very small group of folks. In the summertime, there would be 2,200 people at McMurdo Station, but in the wintertime, it's about 175. And just a really small crew. I worked in the heavy shop or the garage working on, not me personally working on heavy equipment, but that's what we did. So it was that kind of pivotal change, kind of putting a name to some unwelcome experiences that I had that helped me shift from environmental activism to sort of anti-gender-based violence work. And it's stayed with me all these years. And I've started a nonprofit in Uganda where I work with survivors of gender-based violence there who are refugees. And so I think it's all about trying to give back and help those who are less fortunate than other populations who have more privilege. So that's kind of how I got into that.
Yeah, and it's interesting how all these things seem to start out of some kind of a personal experience or journey or something, right? It comes back to something when either you were a kid or you were a young adult, and you realize, you know what, I got to go do something about that. That's good on you, though. That's great.
Yeah.
And Jim, your background seems like a more traditional outdoor path, and we talked about river guiding and whatnot. How'd you shift gears into your current work?
Yeah, so I really had the luck to really have a wide range of experiences in the outdoor industry. So I started at 16 years old, fitting ski boots at a shop in San Jose, California. And as I mentioned before, I found raft guiding in college, which took me all over the Western United States and ultimately to Zambia for 6 months. We share having worked with Mountain Travel Sobek, Rick. And I chased mountain living in places like Squaw Valley and Telluride, Jackson, Wyoming. And we make our home now in Bend, Oregon. So my first job out of college was teaching outdoor science in a camp setting. And I've worked for brands like Yakima Racks and Werner Paddles in marketing, and I've co-owned my own specialty paddle sports store. So I've had a lot of these experiences and met so many great people, and both at work and then the adventures that we've had tangentially to that work, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really been formative to me as a person. And the work that I do now with Respect Outside, really helping shift the industry to a more equitable place, has been incredible for me, right? And Gina really has helped open my eyes to kind of some of the inequities that we see really in a day-to-day living, right, that I didn't notice before. So I've kind of had a little bit of an awakening in my partnership with Gina. But ultimately, like so many people, especially the founders, right, of the outdoor industry, I am a white, able-bodied, cisgendered man of privilege. And I am really now in the perfect position to use my social capital to spark the conversation about what the future of the industry can look like. So in our current society with Me Too, COVID, Black Lives Matter, so many individuals are thinking about what's important to them and how work really should fit into what they want out of life. Mm-hmm. And organizations are having to reimagine, right, what work looks like now and react to that in order to keep top talent. So a big part of what employees want now, right, is to be able to come to work and really just be their whole selves and not have to contort themselves and to fit into the box that is work life.
Right.
So I'm really happy to be contributing to helping find the trail for the industry around these topics. And I really feel like the ability that I have to give back to the community that I've been part of for so long is just really feeds my soul.
That's great. Yeah. And tell our listeners a little bit about Respect Outside. Jim, you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, I'll start. So Respect Outside provides solutions to the outdoor industry to increase gender equity and sexual misconduct and discrimination. So we do this by using the trust and communication found in outdoor pursuits. Think of being on belay while climbing as an example, or safety protocols found in other outdoor adventures. Imagine how you debrief after a raft trip to talk through any safety issues that might have come up. So we want to use these values and these practices that already exist to normalize the conversation around sexual misconduct and gender roles in the workplace.
That makes sense.
And Gina, I'd love for you to jump in here and add to that.
Sure. So in a big picture sense, we advance a culture shift approach for organizations and companies in the outdoor space, right? We have two main pillars. We take a look at setting the table with the code of conduct for your organization with civility as a floor, as a baseline of expected conduct. And then we also train folks to interrupt unwelcome behaviors at work. And so it's kind of a communal effort, that it's not just top-down leadership that brings us all to the table, but that the permission is given to employees to be able to speak up when they find that they're confronted with unwelcome behavior. And we take that one step further to also encourage folks to speak up when they are experiencing behavior that they find positive and that they want to reinforce. I mean, not to be too cavalier, but it's very much like training a dog, right? So you want to use positive reinforcement as much as possible. So between civility and interrupting behaviors, we weave that as the bedrock into policies and procedures, which help codify this behavior that you want to start seeing and that you want to expect of your employees, and have that be baked into the organization beyond a really nice mission statement or some other corporate documents that may live in a bottom drawer that aren't really living. We really encourage that you take an active approach to utilize your policies and procedures as a very strong living document that guides behavior in the workplace.
I love to hear that you do the positive reinforcement too, because I think too many times, like you say, like dogs, we just beat up on the negative side and don't reinforce the positive side, because it takes both to come up with a well-rounded environment, right?
It really does. And, we're very much about calling a call in, right, for inclusion and equity and diversity to the outdoor spaces. And we're seeing this as organizations, right? They want to do this work, but a lot of folks are afraid, truthfully, of the change that is coming in the industry. And they just basically need some help and some guidance to get there. But I think for the vast majority of folks, people want to do the right thing, and they want to be good employers, and they want to be good employees, and they want everyone to get along and have equitable relationships. And part of the problem is that transition from where we are today to how do we get there? And that's the bridge that we help build.
Right. Gina, anything to add to that?
I would just say that we have this culture shift approach that's really based on more concrete compliance elements. But altogether, what we're really trying to do is to create safe work environments that are respectful for all employees so that everybody can thrive at work. And we know that increased diversity and inclusion help the bottom line. But you really need to set the table with equitable practices and bake them into your company before you start bringing on more diverse individuals into your workplace, because it's just not fair to them. So we are really steeped in equity work and making sure that an organization and a company has done the work that they need to do so that when your employees start looking different, as we all hope that in workplaces will become more diverse, and when your guests or clients, depending on if you're an outfitter or whatnot, actually start looking more like the population at large and not just white and male, everybody feels like they belong. So we're one piece in the puzzle of working to create a more equitable and diverse outdoor industry.
Yeah, and I love your tagline. The difference between corporate values and company culture is action. All this stuff is all about action. Tell our listeners about what that means and why it's important.
Right. So employees and consumers really are looking at organizations and how they're bringing their stated values to life. As Gina mentioned, right, you can have words on your website and a document that sits in a drawer, and that's really going to ring hollow. And the industry is looking to diversify their workforce and attract more clients that are more diverse, right? So, but you must really first set the table around equity and inclusion to do that. So, for example, one of your values is to have a more equitable workplace. You need to create environments where everyone's invited to the table, listened to, and able to fully participate without interruption. So gone are the days where we're allowing the loudest voice in the room to take up all the space. So how that becomes actionable would be to create policies and procedures that foster behaviors that support equity and inclusion, such as interrupting unwelcome behaviors and amplifying those positive messages that we were talking about. Then you need to train on those updated policies and procedures and routinely revisit them throughout the year and reward the folks that bring those values to life. You can bring these up in weekly meetings, but we've got to codify them some way. And one of the best ways really is to, like in staff evaluations is an example we use a lot, right? So making sure that you're reviewing your employees on how they are bringing the values that you want in your organization, such as interrupting unwelcome behaviors or amplifying positive behaviors. Use that as a tool in your evaluation process. So the additional benefit that people get when they feel like they're part of the solution is they're really more invested in their workplace. And so we're seeing that as a super add.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So tell us about your training curriculum. How do you guys go in and do the work? That sounds pretty challenging, but I guess if the folks are welcoming, it's not as challenging as it could be if they weren't welcoming to that type of work, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we want to take each client where they are and start there. And so the first thing we do is we do kind of the assessment process where we take the temperature of your company's culture. And we do that in two different ways. We'll do a climate survey, which asks employees and leadership how they feel like the mission of the company is aligned to the practices they see day in and day out at work. And then we do a knowledge assessment to get an idea of what people really know about discriminatory behavior, sexual harassment, and respectful behaviors at large. And a lot of times that's very illuminating for us because it helps us understand, are there problems in your organization that you didn't know about? Mm-hmm. Or are there good things that are also happening that we can build on and emphasize when we actually go on to do the training? After we do the assessment process, we take a deep dive into an organization's policies and procedures because the laws, federal laws and state laws, are changing at the speed of light. And so most likely, unless someone's redone their policies in the last 6 months, they're probably not compliant with your state and maybe not with federal law. So we can help you with that. And as a lawyer, that's what I am very good at, is making sure to do the research about what the law is and make sure that you're compliant with it. But then we train leadership. And this is critical for how we approach our work because it's essential that leadership buys into this process and is actually the voice that introduces us to staff to tell them, we're behind this, we are implementing this process, and these are the folks who are going to lead us through it. And so we work with leadership to enforce how important this is, make the big business case to them so they all understand that this kind of work is actually helping the bottom line, helping you retain your employees and attract more diverse and well-qualified individuals into your company. And then we also take this training to staff. We can tailor make our trainings to your organization, whether that is an online training, if you have folks in all over the place and can't get together for an in-person training, mm-hmm. or we can do an in-person training from anywhere from a day-long training to a really down and dirty compliance-based training that is about an hour and a half long. But 45 states, in one way or another, mandate that organizations train on sexual harassment, that it's more than just having a policy on the books, that you actually have to train on that policy. And then there are 7 states that have separate laws in addition to their statewide organizations on employment discrimination that have codified that sexual harassment training needs to happen on a regular basis. In some cases, it's every year. Some cases, like California, it's every 2 years. But we really feel that this kind of cultural shift, it's sort of a combination of taking your temperature, working on ways to embed civility and respect into your workplace, pulling on those safety protocols you might already have in place in your organization, and then giving folks real life examples of how you can start using bystander intervention to create a positive workplace where it's okay. And leadership has said, we buy into this, we support this, and we're going to evaluate you on how well you start incorporating these new values that we are emphasizing. And that is a critical piece. That's really part of the policies and procedures where you can say to your employees, not only do we have this policy, and not only are we training you on how you can start living our values, but you're going to be evaluated on how well you get this and how well you reflect back the values in your behavior. And we think that's critical and kind of cutting edge.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I'll bet the assessment part is illuminating to some of the individuals as well. I'll bet they didn't realize that, oh, I didn't realize I even did that, right?
Absolutely. We hear on a regular basis that we don't think we need this kind of training because we've never had a complaint, right? And that's almost more dangerous than if I hear that we kind of have a problem here and y'all need to come in and help us. But just because you haven't had a formal complaint doesn't mean that you don't have a problem. And so our assessments will get at that. Yeah. And that is really helpful.
Jim, you have anything to add to that?
I think Gina really nailed it with kind of going through the steps that we take within an organization.
Yeah.
And so I think she got it.
Cool. And what kind of groups do you guys work with? Do you work with a lot of outdoor folks, or is it across the board?
Yeah, so we're really focused exclusively on the outdoor industry, right? It's a massive industry with $887 billion in consumer spending. So we work with brands. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And we work kind of across the gamut. So we work with brands, retailers, rep agencies, trade organizations, outfitters, camps, outdoor educators, nonprofits, resorts, and government agencies. Now, we haven't hit all of those yet, but all of these different segments share a connection to the outdoor recreation economy and have increased risk factors associated, such as a culture of drug and alcohol use or dating in the workplace. Oftentimes, like we see with outfitted businesses or with outdoor educators, right? They're living and they're working together, right? So that's another increased risk factor. And then there's just kind of this general vibe within the outdoor industry, right? That is very machismo oriented and that kind of this go for it attitude. So we know who the audience is, and that's the kind of our secret sauce, right? Is Gina comes with this strong background in gender equity and sexual misconduct prevention. And I have a wide range of experiences in the outdoor industry so that we can really tailor make our trainings to fit the organization that we're engaged with.
Yeah, and I think it's smart of you guys to focus on that too, because that's where your backgrounds are and you'll do a much better job because you've lived the life, so to speak, right? That's smart.
But it's really helpful when I bring up some sort of legal compliance element or some philosophical cultural approach, and then Jim takes that and marries it to his longtime understanding of the outdoor industry. And so it's kind of a little bit good cop, bad cop in the sense that I'm bringing up these concepts that are a little bit of a stretch. And then Jim helps bring it home and helps people understand, yeah, this is how we've been doing it. And then maybe this is a new way to think about what we're suggesting. So he's my translator sometimes, and that's very helpful.
I'll bet, yeah. And it makes it more powerful when you come up with the solutions and the training and the curriculum, right? Because you have those both sides of the coin there, yeah. Do you guys have a success story you can talk about?
Sure. So we hold strict confidence with the folks that we engage with.
Yeah, don't name any names.
Yeah, we do get express permission, right, to use some folks. And what I'd like to say is we love to work with organizations that are transformational in nature, right? And what that means is really those organizations that are looking forward and doing the needed work to create more equity, right? Mm-hmm. So Outward Bound California really comes to mind. And the reason I bring them up is they have such a strong sense of community there. And when we engage with them, that was such a springboard for the work and the message that we carry forward to their organization. So that sense of community really helped. Here's another one where we worked with an outfitter in the Arkansas River Valley, American Adventure Expeditions. And they've got such a strong culture of safety on the water. And we were able to use that as a way to communicate you're safe on the water. And here's a way to frame up sexual misconduct prevention that really tugs at those same kind of safety protocols. So these organizations are not just looking for compliance level, check the box on sexual misconduct training, but they have a deeper desire to look to the future and really see the new face of folks coming into the outdoor industry as both participants and as employees and create an environment that really will be welcoming to everyone.
Yep. And how about a situation that was uniquely challenging?
Sometimes our clients are really focused on the macro cultural shift that they'd like to see in their organizations. And sometimes clients come to us when they have an active problem or they have had problems in the recent past and they want to try and avoid those in the future. And so in those cases, sometimes participants in the trainings are resistant or non-participatory. And so it can be a challenge to bring them along. But we have found that having this dual approach between Gina, the lawyer, and Jim, the longtime outdoor industry advocate, we can slowly bring people around and help them see this kind of rather dry subject matter in a more realistic context. And I think that we've been very successful in that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's shift gears a little bit and get back to some traditional questions I usually ask on the show. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks either wanting to get into the outdoor adventure biz or maybe get into the type of work you guys are doing?
Since COVID came down hard and I took that opportunity, right? So being at home for extended periods of time, I still wanted to be connected to the outdoor industry. And I found that taking mentoring calls from young people who want exactly that, right? As you said, Rick, they want to get into the outdoor business or trying to figure out what their kind of next move is. And so my advice to them is always like, build your network and then really lean on your network. So you're much more likely to be able to want to take a call from a friend as opposed to somebody who's a stranger to you. So at Respect Outside, we're really huge advocates for creating a formal mentoring program within your organization with an equitable lens. And what I mean by that is if we want more women, more BIPOC folks or gender nonconforming folks in leadership positions, right, which seems to make sense to everyone in the industry, then we need to really create a pipeline for that. And right, mentorship programs, formalized mentorship programs within your organization really help show that commitment and build that pipeline so that you can feed that talent from the lower levels of your staff into those leadership seats.
I like it. That's been wildly successful, I would guess.
Yeah, it's really a proven way. This is the challenge, Rick, that we see a lot, right? Is people see the change that they want and they see where they are now. And there's this gap. And we're here, right, to help kind of guide folks wherever they are, right, to the place that they want to be.
Yep.
And we do that really, again, back to that, like calling in and really trying to create inclusivity, even in our process of doing that, right? So making sure that all the right folks are seated at the table, that everyone's being heard, and we want to build that process.
And the inverse helps us as well, right? So I can't tell you the number of times that I have had conversations with young folks in the outdoor industry, or more particularly in the DEI field, who really help me frame up an issue, or they come so naturally these days from a place of understanding equity, inclusion, and diversity. And they really can be helpful to those of us who are a little bit older, who kind of look at these kind of workplace designs that are created by laws or created by the industry itself. And they help us understand with simplicity how this is so easily important and how it can craft up new policies around that. And so like mentoring is awesome, but I also have to say that I feel like this younger generation that is so articulate in their strong principles has helped me personally define how I'm going to approach an issue. Mm-hmm. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, and I think too, I'm a white guy, an older white guy, and I think when you interact with some people of color, that are younger, you're right, they're so articulate and they've had such different experiences. It's really eye-opening to things that you didn't even realize, A, you were doing, or B, you were thinking. And it's just fantastic to get that education exposure to those folks. And I was going to say, too, I think the mentorship programs are huge, as well as internship programs. I think I don't hear enough, or maybe there's things going on that I don't hear about, but it seems like the outdoor space could use a lot more of those types of programs to help people get in, or once they get into a company or an outfitter or a business, to help them succeed. I went through an internship program in college in an outdoor business. It was an outdoor camp, but it was just a great way to indoctrinate myself to that space. So I think that's good. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing that mentorship program. We need more of that. Maybe I'll start an outdoor biz mentorship. That'd be fun.
That would be great. Yeah, absolutely. Because it really helps inform those of us that are doing this work, because that's the generation that's taking over, and these are also the folks who aren't going to put up with kind of historical behaviors that are unwelcome. And they come to the table expecting a different kind of workplace. I think we're seeing that with people leaving their jobs because after COVID, they've really taken a hard look at what they expect work to look like for them. And a safe and respectful place is like the bare minimum that they expect when they walk in the door at work.
Exactly. It's shifting landscape. That's true. So this is a fun question I ask everybody, and everybody seems to either have prepared amazingly for it or just wing it or don't have an answer. What is your favorite piece of outdoor gear under $100?
So since COVID, right, we've been traveling, and we have a Sprinter that we travel and visit clients in. And part of that is that kind of outdoor living piece that as you fold your living room outside of your van. And so the Kelty Love Seat is coming in at $109 right now. And we love it because Gina and I can sit on it together, or if you're on it by yourself, you can kind of spread out. And then we've got dogs, so they love to join us up on the love seat as well.
Do the dogs have their own love seats?
No, they don't have their own, but they can share with me quite nicely. They're very good.
Okay.
And also, it's my work chair. We have some kind of chronicle where we work sometimes. And 10 days ago, we were on this amazing cliff looking at the Pacific Ocean right there in Depot Bay, Oregon. So as a little bit of kind of starting my career in a more traditional sense as a lawyer, it's wild now that I'm sitting in this beautiful Kelty love seat on the cliff of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
It's not what I thought life was going to look like when I was 25.
No, that's great for you guys to be able to do that. That's awesome. We all aspire to that. I'd love to be taking the podcast on the road, which is the end goal at some point. Yeah. I mean, we should be doing this outside somewhere, but unfortunately it's not happening right now, but it will. And you guys have a special offer for our listeners, right? To take advantage of your expertise and services?
Yeah. And I want to thank you, Rick, for making this opportunity available to us. And we're extending a 10% discount to engagements that folks book with us before the end of the year.
Oh, cool. So they can just mention the Outdoor Biz podcast, and that's how they get the discount?
Yeah, exactly. If they give us a call or email us and mention that as we're starting our relationship, we're happy to offer that discount.
Cool. Well, there you go, guys. If you want to take advantage of this expertise in your workplace or just personally, reach out to these guys. I'm sure they can help. As we finish up, is there anything else you want to ask or say of our listeners?
I would really like to encourage folks to think about this work that we do as a positive cultural shift work, as opposed to like sexual misconduct compliance. Because when you take a more macro approach to a specific issue like sexual misconduct prevention, but you put it in the framework of civility, respect, and bystander intervention where everyone's encouraged to speak out, that kind of encompasses the whole culture of an organization. And it's not based on don't do this and don't do that. You can't say that anymore, as opposed to this is how we want everybody to feel good at work. And this is how we get there. So that's what we would like for people to kind of, don't be afraid of doing this work. This work is feel good work. It isn't scary. You can't do that anymore kind of work. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's well said. Jim?
I would just kind of follow with what Gina is saying. And I just think, again, Gina and I have together this kind of magic, this special sauce that when we combine, we really get at the issues that folks need to be addressing, but do it in a way that is relevant to them. And because of my history in the outdoor industry, I get to reflect back upon people see me, right? And I get the opportunity to really be that person who is reflecting who they are as part of the outdoor industry because of my experiences here, and make things not so scary, right? Like if I can do this work and I can change the way that I've thought about equity and inclusion and diversity in outdoor spaces, then really everyone can.
Yep. We did a bunch of corporate training at Eagle Creek, and it was more along the lines of business training, how to run a better business. And a lot of us that had been there a while already, we adopted the phrase that I can learn and I can change, because there was a lot of things that we just did from the get-go. And we've all done various things, whether it's corporately business related or personally related. And we're all capable of change. We just have to find out what it is to change and how to change. And it sounds like you guys are creating a path and a strategy and tactics to make that happen. So good on you. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
And where can people find you if they'd like to follow up? What's your website? You're probably on the socials.
Yeah, so you can check out our site at respectoutside.com, and we're active on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn at Respect Outside. So if you'd like to follow along, like and share our content there. And then you can always get me personally on Jim at respectoutside.com, or give me a call, 541-410-5576. And hopefully, Rick, you can put that in the show notes as well. We'll send you additional links as well.
Yep, that'll all be in the show notes. Well, it's been great talking to you guys. Thanks for telling us what you do. It sounds like it's great work and eye-opening to all of us, I'm sure. So I appreciate it. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you on the road sometime.
Thanks so much. See you on the road.
All right. Thank you.